Thanks for coming, everyone. Welcome to Core 90 Training with the Community. I'm so excited that you're here today because we have a true expert in a field that I think a lot of times agents don't know what to do with, right? This is like a puzzle piece. It's like, this isn't one of the edge pieces, and I'm not sure where it fits in the puzzle, but I know it exists. So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm really pumped. We're going to talk about 1031s. We're going to talk about how to locate investor clients hiding in the woodwork, and what do we do to attract that business toward us so that we can build? How do we get that facilitated properly? And why is it so advantageous for agents? And the short answer is one person, more than one deal, right? So that's a multiplier level event. That's always positive for agents. But I think sometimes the confusion is like, how do I really build this into my business? So we're going to dive into that today. And we've got the man, Mr. Doug Blackwell, here today to tell us about exactly how 1031s work, how to integrate them into our business, and how to really start to build this as a legitimate part of our lead generation strategy. And quick aside, actually two of them, quick two asides before we jump into that. And I want to welcome Doug up on stage. I've got to thank Christine Kites for lining this up today, one of our amazing leaders. Thanks, Christine, for always being incredible and for lining up an awesome guest speaker for us. And then also number two, if you have not signed up for EXPCon yet, this is something that we really, really want to make sure that you understand is top level value for you. And so please let us know if you're going. First off, fire that away in the chat if you haven't done it before. We're pulling together a comprehensive list, and we've got a system we're going to blast out to all of you while we're at the event, so you know where we're hanging out and what things are going on, all this kind of stuff. Very integrated. So Christine says going. Thanks. Jeff and Lexi, we're going. We've got other people I know that are going to fire away here in the chat, and we appreciate that. But we want to know if you're coming so we can keep in touch. But also, if you've never been to a big national event, this is super important because you network, and that's where you build referral relationships. Remember, these folks aren't all from your backyard, so it's way different than going down the street to the title company and you bump into another agent. This is a different experience because these folks want to send you their business for your town. So really, really big deal. Allie will be there. Tyler will be there. Really exciting. Thank you guys for shouting out in the chat. All right. So with no further ado, Mr. Doug Blackwell, thanks for being here today, my man. It's really good to see you.
Jeff, Christine, I can't tell you how excited I am to be here for you guys. And like I said, EXP has been something in my life since 2016. And just so you'll know, I've been to 2 EXP cons. And I didn't understand what EXP was about until I went to one of those events. My belief in your company was probably like kerosene on kindling. And it's not about a sales pitch. It's not about hype. It's about actually getting to meet your founder, getting to meet the players. And everything that was put together at that event, it's rock solid. So if you haven't been to one, you need to get there. This is a great time to do it because the market's still slow. Get something great to go meet. This is a great way to spend your time. So thanks for bringing that up. In fact, I would love to go again this year, but I can't. So anyway, it's been a great thing. But I'm a very much a believer in what your organization has to offer. It spawned, I don't know how many different states are on this call today. But what's real exciting to me about what I do in the investment world, I've been doing 1031 exchanges for about 22 years. And in that time, I was a disbeliever myself. But I met my first investor in 1997. And I was working at Merrill Lynch at the time. And it was a very large account of mine. It was my best account. And we had a meeting. And he leaned across the table. He says, Doug, you did really good last year. You beat the S&P by 10%. And I'd like to bring you more money. And I thought, you have more money? I thought, it's like, wow, I'll take it. But he leaned across the table quietly. I want everybody on the call to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Okay. And I don't want this happening to you because it was a career game changer for me. It took me 8 years to recover from this one that I didn't understand. He leaned across the table quietly, put his elbows on the table, smiling, had his head turned sideways a little bit, shake his head. Yes. He goes, you did great. You know what a 1031 exchange is, right? That's exactly what he said to me. And I went, no, what is that? And he says, no worries. I'll call you tomorrow. And he left. He called and pulled his account. And I didn't understand why. So I called him and said, Jerry, dude, what is going on? Why'd you pull your account? He says, you didn't know what a 1031 was, Doug. I said, well, what is it? He goes, that's okay. You're just not my guy. And I didn't know my client is what the problem was. Much like most of the agents on this call don't know really your clients. You don't know who they are, what you're busy worried about. but you're not asking them what they really do in life. This guy owned half a city. And literally, he made his money in real estate. And I had the crumbs. The crumbs was a large amount of money. He started off just like you and me. He started off by buying one house when he was younger. Why? Because he had to have someplace to live. And I'll tell my story a little bit more during this presentation, but my goals today are threefold. One is I want everybody to understand what a 1031 is, obviously, and how I play into the game. That'll be about 20 minutes. But I want to spend the rest of the time talking about how can we transform your business to be that you're not just working with a guy buying a house, because that's a one-time transaction every 3 to 5 years. When you get a hold of an investor, they do 1 or 2 or 3 transactions a year, maybe more. And when they move in mass. And what's interesting is I'm sitting in La Jolla, California right now with a nice Zoom background, beautiful place. Investors don't stay put. Neither will you. Your marketplace will not be where you sit and work every day. It'll be the globe, because that's what investors do. How do we get started? Where's the first step? The first step is going to be understanding them. And the second step is understanding how to just casually speak their language. And the third step is having a team. And that team is what you're sitting on right now with EXP, is a global empire, basically. But for 1031s and investors in my world, it's just for the United States. But most importantly, you can find anybody you need in this organization just by going up to the cloud and playing around for a little while. So super excited for you guys. So I'm going to go get started so I don't waste any more time. The first 20 minutes, I'm going to go really quick, okay? It's a high-level overview. I'm not going to try to make you an expert on 1031 exchange. I just want you to know what I am and why I exist. But I'm also going to, during that 20 minutes, give you some language. Listen to the terms I use. There are going to be some industry terms. I'll explain them. But if you're at the Christmas party and you hear somebody use one of these terms, that's the person you want to be hanging out with, okay? It's not the person griping about what their husband or wife's doing or what's going on with a babysitter. It's the certain things are going on. It's a language. And most investors, if you can speak their language, they're immediately comfortable with you, just like my guy was. I couldn't speak 1031 language, so he pulled his account. And by the way, currently to this day, he's the largest account at Merrill Lynch in the Pacific Northwest. He was my client and I lost him. So that's the impact. Is just not even knowing what I do had on me. So I'm gonna go and get started here. Let me get my screen shared. Let me get my PowerPoint up here. Now this is a national, we are my business is a, hold on a second. There we go. Everybody see that okay? Jeff, can you see that okay?
We can see it great.
Perfect. All right. So I'm showing the Pacific Northwest. I do a lot of work up there. I do a lot of work in Oregon, California. I do a lot of work in Nevada, tons of business in Florida now. Any warm state, any investor-friendly state, believe me, I'm there and I'm very much busy. But interestingly enough, we're a federal law. So that means I can operate anywhere in the United States doing the same business over and over again like Groundhog Day. It's not state specific so much. It's about a federal deal. So hold on a second, get rid of that screen. So anybody on this call today, it doesn't matter where you're sitting, the same law applies. Okay. So 1031 exchange, what it really is, and before I get started here, why is my screen not forwarding? Okay, hold on a second here. There we go. This is what one of my slogans is: when gain is pain, we can help. And because my investors, virtually 99.9% of them have made money in their properties. Being a real estate investor, it's very difficult to lose money on the actual property if you just hold it for a few years. Yes, they go up and down in value, but they don't go down for very long. Look what's going on right now. And I don't see that trend changing anytime soon. In fact, I'm telling my clients, they say they're waiting for this big dip in the interest rates next year. It's not going to matter. What's going on right now is buy it now. You can refinance if rates drop, great. But getting into the market is important because we want to create capital gains. We want to create income. We create a lot of things. That's my QR code. If you all want to take your phone real quick and stick me in your phone, take a picture of that. It'll automatically load you up. It'll put my email, my phone number. It'll put 1031 in my name for you. So when you forget my name, just type 1031 in your phone. And I promise to show up. I never fail. And my business has actually gone up by 10 times the amount since I started doing that. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep going on here. So anyway, this presentation is for educational purposes only. It's not a constituted legal tax advice. This is my disclosure, obviously. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to be your CPA, but I'm really good at giving you the questions you need to be asking your tax advisors or your team what it is you could be doing to maximizing your life with your investments. Okay. So anyway, real basic, cover the basics of 1031 exchange, basic rules and regulations, but most importantly, case studies. What I'm doing right now, I'm not doing anything in the middle. It's a special presentation. So what the reason we're doing a 1031 exchange, it's for investor clients only. Again, it's for an investment property being sold. Okay, we're going to be deferring capital gains taxes on those sales. The second reason we do them is to build wealth. Through real estate, there's no other asset out there that builds wealth faster than does real estate. In fact, all of my big clients that I've ever had made their money in real estate, not the stock market. Okay, it's very important to know that. We want to improve or replace income with a 1031 exchange. Again, improve asset quality, but most importantly, if you're listening to me today, why Jeff and Christine and I have gotten together, a lot of clients need a change of lifestyle. It's huge because it's a generational transfer. See, there's a process going on quietly underneath your feet. And if you don't want to take advantage of it, that's fine. It'll be a freight train that goes by that you never heard. Basically, what's going to happen, everybody's heard about it, the great transfer of wealth from the baby boomers to the other generations. Yes, that in fact is happening. But in the meantime, the baby boomers that have all the wealth, that have all the properties, want a change of lifestyle while they do this transition. If you can understand that language, you will triple your business. You will gather more clients than you know what to do with, because that's where the money is. And if you're one of the millennials or one of the X-Gens or one of the other younger generations, guess what? You need to be ready to receive this gift from them, because you will become an investor whether you like it or not. You're probably going to inherit some properties from them. But here's what I found. And I'm going to use I'm going to coin the phrase and you can use it. There are so many unintentional investors out there, unintentional landlords that are being created today, that this is the funny part. They're going to be complaining in the beginning that they inherited these investment properties from their parents because they got to manage them. But all of a sudden, they're going to stop complaining. And I can promise you 90% of them will always be a real estate investor. My question to you is, why do you want to wait to inherit it? Go buy it now, make it happen. And if you can find some of these people that are ready to unload some of these properties, they don't want to unload because of the taxes. They don't want to move because they're afraid of the tax liabilities. They've spent their whole life creating this massive megawatt of money that they need to pass to the next generation. But if they simply sell it, they're going to pay taxes. And you being a real estate agent, among the thousands of people asking them that they should sell that property, all they're thinking is that you want to get a commission. You're not asking them about the right question. They won't sell because they don't know where to go. They also don't know how to get there. And they're most importantly afraid of losing up to 1/3 to 1/2 of their money to taxes if they do sell. Because if they simply pass it to their estate, there will be no taxes. I'll explain this in a moment. If you understand this phenomenon, you will understand the white elephant in every one of your clients' rooms that they will not tell you, but they're thinking it whether you like it or not. You think it's because they think you want a real estate commission. They don't care about that. They would gladly pay you for your services. They're terrified of losing 1/3 of their wealth. That's the key fact right there. So I'm gonna keep going. Some of these are pages that I've built that I'm only go through a few of them, but the taxes that we're deferring, just so you know the pain that I'm talking about. This is the pain that these real estate investors have to endure to sell a piece of real estate. Your commission is such a small piece of it, it's ridiculous. So watch this. The federal capital gains tax is the first one. Obviously, the feds want their cut. It ranges from 0 to 20% of the capital gains in the property, not the sales price, but the gains. But trust me, most of these clients have owned these properties for a long time and they've made a lot of money. And the story kind of sounds like this. Yeah, I bought this property back in 1990. And they pound their fist on the table and say, it was everything I had. Man, was it expensive. They paid 50 grand for it, right? Today we say we're paying 500 and wondering why we're paying so much. Maybe 750 for a base entry property, right? But it's everything you have again, isn't it? Why wait? It's never going to change. It's always going to be that. But here's the problem. Up to 20% of that money immediately goes away to taxes. That means the whole property pretty much, 50,000 up. But wait, there's more pain to this client. There's more taxes because they may have paid, let's say 100,000 for the property, but they've owned it for a long time. And that means it has been depreciated, meaning you get a huge tax benefit. If you don't know this about real estate, I'll explain how it works. You get to depreciate a piece of property and get a huge income tax break along the way. Let me give an example of how this works. Each of you are 1099. You're in business for yourselves. It is the best tax code in the country. You could be a W-2 employee and get really raked over the coals, or you could be 1099 and get to work your money. The way it works is this. I know you each bought a laptop for your business. I know you did, but on that laptop, you probably wrote it off the first year you bought it. So that $1,000 you paid for the laptop, what you got for that, and most of you probably don't even know what you got for the write-off, you got $1,000 of tax-free income that year. That's called depreciation. You got to depreciate that laptop on your tax return to get an income tax benefit. It's huge, it's cool. That income tax benefit on a laptop is never recaptured like it is on real estate. I'll explain in a moment. See, the laptop has a useful life by the IRS of simply 1 year, which is true. It's really only good for a day or two. It's worthless pretty much. You can't sell it for anything, but it's business asset. But you get that break. Well, they put a different schedule on real estate. They allow you to depreciate it over 27 and a half years, meaning that you can take, let's say, for example, you bought the house for $250,000. And let's say the land value was $50,000 of that purchase, meaning that the building sitting on that land was $200,000. You'll notice when you buy a property, it breaks it down for you. So that $200,000 is what you can depreciate. Can't depreciate dirt, but the building you can. It goes down, it gets wore out. Well, divide that by 27.5 because they allow you to depreciate houses over 27 and a half years. Not like a laptop, it's only 1 year. You take it over 27 and a half years. Divide 200,000 by 27.5, and you get about $7,200. That's what you get every year for a tax break on your income tax return for 27 years. It's crazy cool. Important fact to know, listen carefully. I said that goes on for 27 and a half years. What happens after that 27th and a half year goes by? All of a sudden, your client's tax returns, they all of a sudden start complaining about, I don't know what just changed. Damn government, my taxes just started soaring. I have to pay all this income tax. I don't know what changed. What changed was their depreciation schedules ran out, and they're now having to pay taxes on all that income they're getting. And it happens almost virtually overnight. It's pretty cool. So if you hear someone complaining about it and you know they own real estate, trust me, that's the person you want to be talking to. They own a piece of property too long. It's a problem. So let's talk about this for a second. That's two of the taxes. Here's the next one. The net investment income tax. Oh, joy. That's the one the government's put in play about 8 years ago to take care of all the government things that they do for us, all the fine things. Part of Obamacare is how it started, but they don't get rid of it now. That's not needed. They use it for other things. Not complaining about it. It pays for stuff, but it's a tax you can't avoid. The last tax is going to be the state capital gains tax rate. And that's different for each state that you live in. It ranges from 0 in Florida and Washington, for example, up to 33.5% in states like California. Okay, California dumps another 16% on top, 14.5% on top of all these taxes. It's crazy how bad it is. But the blended tax rates, you do not want to give this number to your clients because they're going to ask you, what would the taxes look like? You never can really answer that because we don't know, because the CPA would take care of that, and you don't want to give them bad advice. What I tell clients is if you've owned a property any length of time, it's big. Check with your accountant. I can promise you this, it's big, but it's a blended rate between 23 and 40%, depending on the state and how long you live there. I tell clients that all the time. They go, on the whole amount, it could be, check with your accountant. But then stop and do this. This is the one thing, again, I want you to watch my facial expressions and my language and how I do this. I learned this from that first client I met, okay? Remember I told you about him on the very first moment of my conversation. This is what you do when they say, what are the taxes going to be if I sell this property? And it's an investment property, okay? You're going to lean forward, turn your head sideways, smile, and shake your head yes, says, well, you're going to do a 1031 exchange, right? And just like my guy did to me, I learned that from him. And they're going to say one of two things. They're going to say, of course, I'm going to do a 1031. I'm not an idiot. Then great. Your tax bill is going to be zero because you're going to defer all of it. Let me do my job as your agent and go find the perfect investment property for you. And let's get busy. Okay? Because you know how to deal with this client. But this is the tragedy. Most of your clients don't even know I exist. They don't know you can defer all these taxes. They don't know they don't have to pay them today. Okay. This is what they say to you when you ask that question. You're doing a 1031 exchange. They go, what's that? When they say, what's that? That you just became their best friend. You're going to simply say to them, the IRS allows you to defer the taxes on the sale of this property. You follow a few short rules. Don't worry about the gory details right now. I got a whole team of people. That's all they do. I'll introduce you to Doug. He'll walk you through the process. Super simple. Let's just get busy. I'll take care of it. But I think you need to have that conversation now because you don't know what a 1031 is. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So this is what I want to ask you, Mr. Client, because really, he's going to take care of the tax bill for you. Let's just say for fun, this property you're selling didn't have any capital gains taxes. There were no laws, no rules. You could just take the money and do what you want with it. What do you want to see the money do? Really, deep down inside, what do you want to see this money do? And they will tell you what their whole game plan is, where they're trying to go, and your job is to help them get there. That's pure and simple how it works, okay? So that's my first tip, is understand what we do, and don't become a deer in the headlights like I was when they first asked, what is a 1031 exchange? You do not need to be an expert at this. Just understand I'm deferring all of that liability for about $1,000 is all I charge. It's crazy. People say, how do you make a living at that, Doug? I says, trust me, I do a lot of these things. And so it's okay. So it's to build wealth, of course. I'm gonna go through these slides real quick. I'll send a copy of the slide deck to Jeff. He can get it out to you guys. Anybody might want that. So don't try to take slides of this, but the change of lifestyle, I am going to stop on just for a second. This one is probably the number one reason why people are doing exchanges and doing things today. Is that background noise okay, Jeff?
There's just a little bit of fuzz on your mic, but otherwise it's in good shape over here.
Okay, good. So the change of lifestyle is very important because they're going to maybe purchase a future retirement home. You see, we can do a 1031 exchange on a property we own that we've had other people use and rent and destroy or whatever you want to call. We can sell that, take all the capital gains money, all the money we made, and 1031 exchange it and buy another property that at some point in the future we may want to move into as my future retirement home. In the Pacific Northwest, in Oregon, in Arizona, in Florida, it's not different anywhere. They're all doing this. Why? They're getting older. They're saying, I want to go somewhere else. And they know that eventually they got to be in that market. If you're in real estate, you know that if you're not invested or own a property in a market, it's hard to enter the market. But if you own property there, it's super simple. So what they're doing is they're saying, I'm going to sell a property in Arizona, for example, and I want to be in Florida when I retire. They'll 1031 exchange and buy a beautiful place where they want to be. They'll rent it out for a couple of years. And guess what happens? When they finally retire a couple of years later, they move out of the home they're in and move into the property in Florida that they bought with this exchange. That's completely legitimate, completely legal. So what happens now is they either sell the property they're in or they rent it out. And here's what's so exciting about this. If you own just your home, and this is something you could tell everybody that's buying their home today, you can't get ahead in the real estate game if you only own one property. Why? Because you are the market. You are the market. For example, your property you live in, you own no other real estate. Let's say you sell that house for a huge capital gain. Well, it's cool, but you got to buy another house to live in because you don't own anything else. That house went up too, didn't it? It's not that exciting anymore because you got to use all the money. Even if you downsize, you end up using all the money because you have to buy some place to live. There's no other choice. Okay. But people say, I wish I could have sold high and then buy low. Well, then where are you going to live? Wait for the market to crash in 20 years. Here's the point. If you own two pieces of property, you can always manipulate the market. Once you realize that two are pretty cool, three makes it even better. Most of my real estate investors, once they bought their first investment home, they complain, they're worried, they're nervous because they don't understand what it's all about. But once they do it, they realize it's not that difficult. And one's good, two's better, three's even greater, five's awesome, 10 gets pretty cool. It gets really nutty, but you don't even realize you're doing it. So my advice to everybody is if you want a future that is very sound and very stable, buy investment real estate. To change your future of everything you're doing is amazing. So they're also buying vacation homes. That's why I mentioned Arizona and Florida are big for vacation homes, places they want to go. Southern California are great places for vacation homes. The coast, any place on a coast that you live. People are buying those properties. How are they affording them? They're using the IRS's money they normally pay to taxes to buy them. It's crazy because you don't have to pay the tax to get there. You use that money to acquire the real estate. So vacation homes and second retirement homes, here's the key. If you buy one of these with a 1031, just know that you can't use it personally very much for 2 years. But after 2 years, you can start using it as much as you want. I'll give the details to your clients as they need be. But the last one, we have a Delaware statutory trust. I just want to mention this briefly as a sample product, that this is for a client that says, you know something, I'm getting a little up there in age. I don't want to sell because I got to pay the taxes, but I certainly would love to stop being a landlord. But I'm not going to sell because I got to pay the taxes. Where am I going to go? Well, if they sell their investment house, they're saying to themselves, I got to buy an investment house. It's nothing different. Well, no, this is a professionally managed commercial piece of real estate, and it gives the client the way to get out. It's an exit strategy, and it's becoming more and more popular for clients that are selling investment properties that are looking for a place to park the cash. It's not exciting for the realtor because you only get the sale. But here's the deal. There are 4 transactions for each property sold. There's one when the buyer sells, or the seller that owns the property sells it. There's a buyer that buys it. That's 2 transactions. And with a 1031 exchange, there's often another transaction where someone sells something and someone buys something. So for each property in a 1031, it generates so much business for everybody. Just chase the money and you do really well with it. So I just want to bring that up because the pain is the tax they got to pay and where are they going to go. Answer those questions for the client, and believe it or not, they will sell. Here are the talking points to a client that's owned a property for a really long period of time. Their depreciation schedules have ran out. Okay, that means they're not getting the tax benefit anymore, or they're getting ready to. The next one is this, it's very painful. That property is getting older. They've owned it for a long time. Even though it's in good shape, the income they get, they're spending a lot of that money on maintaining the property they own. So again, the net income to them is very low. Get rid of that problem of expenditures and their profits go up. That's where, again, clients don't really realize that they're missing out on the best opportunity to go ahead and sell the older properties. Let them go to have someone that needs to buy them. And what better time to sell them in today's market when there's such a low inventory? And those prices, believe it or not, the rental houses are the ones that are in the affordable range. That's the important thing to understand. They're affordable. So 1031, I'm going to go through this super quick, okay, because I don't want to blow through time. But we're going to defer taxes. We're not going to get rid of them. We're a tax deferred exchange for investment property, okay? That's what we do. There's different types of exchanges that we can do. The most important to understand is whatever the client needs to do, we can make it happen. That's the important thing to understand. If they tell me in advance, I can make a lot of cool things happen. What a 1031 exchange is not for is a fix and flip. If you're fixing and flipping real estate as a business, you're not investing, you're making it a business. That means also property held for resale or inventory, which would mean all of your developers and all the people building houses for a living, they can't do 1031s. But don't worry about that gory detail. I'll take care of it when you refer your client to me. Here's what a 1031 does. Basically, the seller gets to keep and defer all the money normally lost to taxes on the sale of highly appreciated property. They may use these monies to purchase more property, earn more money, and set higher depreciation schedules and more. It's just a very, very powerful tool. As a quick example, let's say we have equity in a sale of a property that does an exchange. And let's say it's $1 million. The basis, which I'll explain in a moment, is $100,000. And their gain in this case, if you subtract the two, is $900,000. If you do a 1031 exchange, there's no taxes due. By doing an exchange in this example, the client gets to keep an additional $225,000 normally written as a check to the government, usually more than they paid for the property originally is what it works out to be. They get to keep all that money to buy more real estate. Now, also, just as a plus, that's an additional $225,000 you get to earn your 3 to 6% on too. So it's a win for everybody. Okay, so a 1031 is a big, big play. Again, here's the taxes again. I just put them on a separate slide as part of my presentation. I'm not going to spend time on it. But here's the rules really quick, just really quick, okay? And don't belabor yourselves on the details here. But in order to get 100% of the taxes due deferred, you got to follow some rules. You can do a partial exchange where you defer some of it and pay tax on some of it. But if you want a 100% tax deferred exchange with zero tax, your intent when you sell the property, you had to hold the property for 2 years as an investment. If it's less than 2 years, I just want to talk to them about it. If it's less than 1 year, I want to talk to their CPA. So the real short-term stuff is really negative. Over a year today, we're good to go. Okay. So it's intent plus time. The taxpayer that sells must be the taxpayer that buys. So if mom and dad sell, mom and dad probably should be purchasing. If an LLC sells, probably the LLC should buy. If a trust sells, probably the LLC or trust should buy. Again, that's all that really matters. We can make changes to that also as we move through the process, but that's how it works. They must buy like-kind property. This is where you're going to hear one of those terms. When you hear a client talking like-kind, specifically saying that, it's a misunderstanding in my industry that's become one of those coined phrases because they just don't understand and they've done all their research on the internet. I'm using that term because when you hear a client saying, I understand like-kind, trust me, they own investment real estate. They are an investor. Reason is that when you sell an investment property, you have to buy an investment property. That defines like-kind in a 1031 exchange. What they're thinking, though, is if they sold a house, they have to buy a house. That's not true. You can sell an investment house and buy land. You can buy commercial real estate. You can sell a shopping center and buy rental homes. You can buy oil rights, wind rights, Delaware statutory trusts. You can do a lot of neat stuff. But the word like-kind, you'll hear people talking about at the Christmas party. That's the person you want to be talking to, okay? And it's one of those cool terms. The seller must purchase equal or greater value of the one they sold. So if they sold for $550,000 and they got a real estate commission, some tax, some escrow work done, some money to the buyer to fix the property, and our fee of $1,000. Let's say they end up with $500,000 as the sales price. That would be the price you need to replace to. Okay. It's a general number. It's not specific. The seller should reinvest all the cash proceeds from the sale into the new property, and they should replace any debt that was paid off with new debt or equal cash to offset that value. So again, selling for 500, regardless how it's structured, they need to buy something worth 500 or greater to do a 1031 exchange with 100%. If they buy a smaller property, for example, 450,000, then they'll pay taxes on the $50,000 difference. It won't blow the whole exchange. I love doing that for clients because I want them to put some cash in their pocket. You'll also know that most real estate investors are very wealthy, but they're cash broke. Okay, they have no money. It's all tied up in their real estate. So giving them a little bit of cash should become their friend, and we want to do that for them. Anything that the client receives that is not part of real estate in this transaction is called boot. That's another term that they use frequently. Boot is taxable. It's something that received from a transaction that's going to create the tax. Boot could be cash. Boot could be debt relief. Boot could be if they sell or finance the property and carry the note. That's not real estate. Boot is boot. There's lots of terms for it. But my point is that term is one of the ones that people use frequently that are investors. So I'm not going to go over eligible closing costs. I'm not going to talk about a lot about refinancing before or after an exchange. Just understand if you have a client that wants to do a real estate transaction, that they are doing an investment deal, get them to me as quickly as you can so we can discuss their transaction and we'll figure out what we can do to maximize their deal. If you're on this call with me today and with Jeff and Christina, if you don't own investment real estate and you're at all worried about what you're going to pay in taxes, go buy it. Ask your accountant. If I bought an investment house, help me. I can guarantee you he'll shake his head yes. He'll say go buy two. So the benefits are massive. The income is great, and the long-term effects are out of this world. So again, it's about getting started with the process. These are the types of properties you can buy with a 1031 exchange, and even certain options contracts, believe it or not, are now eligible. Options to buy real estate can be purchased with a 1031, as well as Delaware statutory trusts have been added. So I'm not going to cover Delaware statutory trusts today, but it'll be in the presentation for you. Is basically what it basically has to happen to it. But what's not like kind to us is these terms. Things that would do a 1031 exchange on a primary residence, you don't need to do that. A primary residence, you get a tax-free exclusion of $250,000 per person on title or $500,000 for a married couple. It's really powerful. That is the number one thing you can make money with. The problem is you always have to use that money to buy another house to live in. You can never enjoy it unless you own more than one. Then we'll start playing some really cool games with that, okay? But what if you have a home? And listen carefully. What if you have a home you've been living in for a long time and you've got more than $500,000 in capital gains in it? That's not uncommon these days, is it? Let's say you have $1 million in gain. Well, I'm not going to sell it now because I don't want to give it to the government. Well, here's what we do. What if you turn that property into an investment property, okay, and rent it out for just 2 years? Here's the cool thing. Anybody could be the tenant. Your kids could be the tenant, right? You're going to move on to something else. By doing that, what happens is if you sell that property now within 3 years of moving out and get it closed, you can take your 500,000 tax free and do a 1031 exchange on the rest and buy investment property with it and pay zero tax. Trust me, the amount of income they will produce by doing that will buy another house or two as well. It's pretty cool what happens. Again, I can't do a 1031 exchange on the home as the primary residence, but if you convert it to an investment, you can. Second home's the same thing. You can convert to and convert from these types of properties. And I might be getting a little deep really fast, but I just want to get to the meat of this conversation because I know Jeff has a lot of great things to talk about. We'll be covering some things for you. But it's very important to know that what we have in front of us is an opportunity that you can't pass up. I'm going to wrap up my piece of this presentation is when you do a 1031 exchange, it's critical to understand you have a very specific time frame you need to complete the transaction. So don't lollygag around. When you do a 1031 exchange, the day it closes, that starts the clocks we're talking about here. The day the property closes, you only have 180 calendar days to buy property for a 1031 exchange and close on it. The catch, you need to identify that property by the 45th calendar day after it closes. In other words, let us know the accommodator. We're called qualified intermediators or accommodators or 1031 geeks. We got to know in writing what properties you're working on and which ones you want eligible by the 45th calendar day. You could put more than one property on the list. I'll talk about that in a second, but we have to have that list. Here's the catch. After day 45, you don't have to buy those properties. You don't even have to have an offer on those properties to make them on the list. But those become the only properties eligible for purchase with the 1031 exchange after day 45. Okay? Again, you can identify them. You don't have to buy them, but they need to be identified. You need to locate them with a physical address or a legal description. Okay? Pretty simple to do if you have time. So my key is this. You start looking before you sell the property at close, obviously. If you need to buy a month or so of time when you sell the property, you know the client hasn't even had a chance to look, say, great, we'll ask for a 30-day close before you sell the property. That'll buy you 30 days plus the 45. Currently in today's market, as hot as it is, we're not getting much more than 60 days notice, but we're getting 30 all the time. Okay, why 30? Because they have to get a loan off in anyway, and a loan takes that amount of time. So again, start hunting. You can go ahead and secure a property before theirs closes as part of a 1031. In fact, the hottest topic I can share with you today, listen carefully, we can do what's called a reverse exchange. Maybe your client wants to find the property they want to buy first, knowing that they can sell theirs really quick. Their property's ready to go, but they're afraid to start these time clocks. This is the number one reason people are not selling their investment properties. So listen carefully. If they have the cash to make the purchase, let me buy the replacement property for them first. The day I buy it starts the clock. I'll give them 6 months to sell their property. They're already set in play. It's ready to rock and roll. Just get the property sold and we roll the money forward and complete the exchange. There are some, if they need loans and debt, we need to talk to them in advance to make sure we can make it work. But if they have cash to make the purchase or the seller will carry the financing for them, then you got to rock. This thing is, I'm doing so many of these reverse exchanges in this marketplace because it's easy to sell. It's hard to find a good property. And unfortunately, the good property shows up when they haven't got something ready to go because it goes so fast. So again, I look forward to working with you guys on these types of transactions as well. So anyway, the identification rules, again, I'll send a copy of this for you. The 3 property rule is what normally people would use. You're selling one and buying one property, a big one, 3 properties on the list, no more. But if you're buying a bunch of smaller price properties and you sold something big, the 200% rule works really well. That means you can identify more than 3, but if you do, you're capped at 200% of what you sold. That would mean, like, for example, you sold a $2 million asset for cash, and let's say for fun, you want to buy 4 or $500,000 homes. Well, you can do that. It's obviously more than 3. You have to identify 4. Well, if that happens, just remember 200% is the cap in that case. Not to be confused, the 3 property rule has no cap. When you go to the 4th property, you get the cap at 200%. Okay? Don't have to buy them. That's how it works. I'm not going to cover the 95% exception. That's something we do about once a year, but it's pretty cool when you do it. So that's going to be it for this piece of the presentation. I'm going to send this whole presentation to Jeff, if that's okay. And that's a 1031 in a nutshell. But as we start talking about the opportunity in front of us right now that we're all looking at, the reason that Jeff's on this call, the reason that Christine's on this call, the reason that I'm on this call, this is a chart of a picture that I received about 2 weeks after I met my client at Merrill Lynch that said, did I know what a 1031 exchange was? This chart is basically a demographic chart. And you've all heard people talking about, yeah, the baby boomers are turning 65 at a rate of 10,000 per day. You've heard that the millennials are turning 40 at a rate of 19,500 today. So what? Well, guess what's going to start happening? And it's happening right now. The transfer of wealth. There will be 10,000 clients per day in the United States, 10,000 per day for the next 15 years, transferring 100% of their wealth to their families every day for the next 15 years. Why? Because they're dying. The baby boomers are going to start passing away at that rate. I'm one of them. I'm going to eventually go. I'm welcoming it. I can't stop it. But when that happens, all of the taxes I've been deferring with all these 1031s that I've done for me go away and they're replaced with the estate tax. I will never pay that tax, nor will my family. It's really cool. Up to $12.3 million per person you can die with. The feds will not tax if your estate is set up correctly. My family gets all of that. So this picture is why it's so important. This little yellow squiggly line you see here is the S&P 500, and the green mass is live births delayed by 50 years, making this group of individuals, the baby boomers, back in 1993, if you look at the end of the S&P 500, you look down here, that was in 1992, 93. I got this picture in 95, okay, as someone else talked to you about this. We looked at this and we said, wait a minute, this little picture, this big ramp up of live births, and the S&P 500 conveniently rides along with it, meaning the housing market too, by the way. What's interesting is that the next time that phenomenon is going to happen is right over here. If you go down, you're looking at 2022. Why did I launch my business the way I did a year ago? 2022, I've been waiting for this for a very long time. This ramp you see going up is massive. It's going to be much bigger than the last one. And if you want to get in front of it now, I would advise you kindly and wisely to get in front of it. Let's go make some money, because it's real important that we all work together on this stuff and make this happen. I want to be your trusted resource when it comes to talking about clients selling businesses, selling buildings, selling assets, not even knowing they can sell. If they have investment real estate, believe me, they have more than one home. They often don't tell you about those things because people are very private. But when you find an investor, guess who they hang around with? Other investors. My real estate agents that embrace this topic not only get one client, they get two clients. They don't get just 2 homes, they get 20 homes to work with. Again, it's a real exciting place to be. They're very demanding, but so is the paycheck. It's pretty awesome. So Jeff, I'm kind of wrapped up there. Do you want to go ahead and jump in and ask me questions to wrap that part up, and let's take it on forward? What do you think?
I think this is awesome, Doug, and it's so fun to really hear a true expert talk on this topic, because I think many times it's so deeply understood. And I feel like every time I hear you talk, I learn like 5 new things where I'm like, oh, dude, it's awesome. So I'm going to kill a screen share there. Really, really great question came through the chat here from Lexi, which is, can you talk about how real estate agents do actually work with you? In other words, I think sometimes there's a lack of clarity even on the agent side of what is a QI? How's this work? What I reach out to you, and then how do you get paid? And what do I, there's just some lack of clarity there. And I think if we provide them with clarity, it's more likely that they'll move forward. So would you cover that first?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. And I probably should cover that a little more in my presentations. How you work with someone like myself is you're going to have a client that comes to you that says, look, I'd like to learn more about a 1031 exchange, or I need to do one. Who do you recommend? And the referral is really simple. An email to me introducing the client and my permission to call them. I will promise you, you will hear back from me within 3 business days. Either I got a hold of them or I didn't. I'm not a sales guy. I only charge $1,000 to do a transaction. So it's not like I'm going to kill myself if they say no to me. It doesn't hurt my feelings so bad. I want to make sure the 1031 exchange is the correct method to move forward. And if it's not, I'll make suggestions on what it doesn't. At the end of that conversation I have with your client, I will report back to you and let you know what had happened. Here's the most important thing I can share with you. More than half the time, I found out so much more about what they're trying to do because I know the right questions to ask. And I'll tell you that they're not selling one home, they're selling six. If you show them how to do this, they got a lot more coming, or they want to buy more than one property. They got three kids they want to buy houses for. I'll find out details that they oftentimes in your conversation wasn't caught because you only have 20 minutes to talk with someone and they're good. No matter what you're talking about, they're going to drown you out. But I get to take it to the next level for you. So working with me, that referral by phone, by email is great. But what is hard is if you give my name to your client, say, give them a call when you have a moment, I may hear from them 6 months from now, 8 months from now. That opportunity, why they're talking to you in the first place, is going to be gone. So I think sooner the better, well before they list the property for sale, if you can, because when they list it, it kind of starts their horizons of when they're going to be doing things. I want to find out why they're selling this property. Are you planning on selling more than one? Did you ever ask the client that? No. When you have an investor selling a property and they're doing this, is this the only one you're planning on selling today? They're going to say no. Then guess what? That means they have more than one when they say no. Otherwise, they'll say, oh, this is the only one I have. It just those little nuances, you'll know. Most investors have more than one property, okay? When they get one, they get two, they get three. So working with me is really simple. Make the referral as soon as you can. I can do a 1031 exchange transaction, even if they've already listed the property for sale, and even if you have an accepted offer to sell it. We have to be engaged before it closes, though. Reason being is your client cannot touch the proceeds from the sale. We have to receive them as part of the transaction. So we have to coordinate with your title or escrow or lawyer that's doing the closing to say, look, don't send the money to the client. They can't touch it. You send it to us. So we need to have an agreement in place that says what we're going to do with the money, what our rules are, what we do, what our insurance is. Please, for God's sake, ask the accommodator what insurance they cover for your client, how long they've been in business, what protects their clients, because most of the time, believe it or not, they're trusting you to have already done that research. You cannot be sued for making a referral. You cannot be sued for forgetting to make a referral. But you get a really upset client when you forget to, or you send them to a bad person, okay? I've been doing 1031s for 22 years and carry $50 million of fidelity bonding. I carry $25 million of E&O, and I carry $15 million of cyber security fraud. I have to carry that now too. So that's pretty much how to work with me, but sooner the better.
Man, that was as comprehensive as I could have asked for. That's fantastic, though, because I think that answers the question. And by the way, I went ahead and reposted Doug's email there in the chat, so everybody has that. We'll put it on the replay afterwards, so everybody has access. And again, we're not, this is not about us making money. Just to be clear, we don't have some sharing agreement with Doug. We want to connect you guys with the right resources, though, so that you can access this part of the network. And Doug, one of the things that we talked about before, and I know we masterminded this with Christine, was how can agents find investors? Because I can guarantee you there's some agent on this call, and if it's you, don't feel bad about it. It's okay, where you're like, I don't have extra money to buy a property. I can't do that yet. Well, we're going to help you get there faster, because guess what? Selling 5 houses is better than selling one, and doing it with one client who likes you is much easier than doing it with 5 clients where it's a moving target and a cat circus. And so, well, I've also found that investor clients tend to be my very favorites. They're very mathematical. They're less emotional about their properties. They just make pragmatic choices based on gains. And I like that a lot. And so they tend to be fun. However, they're hiding in the woodwork. How do we find them all? And so I wanted to talk really quickly with folks and give you guys some ideas. And I didn't do slides. I know for those of you who are on this call a lot, you're like, what? No slides, Jeff, what in the what? But I just wanted to kind of give you guys some ideas about where investors are hiding. And I find that it's a really, really powerful topic. So I'm going to start off with one that I think is relatively unknown for some reason in the agent community, but it's a really big deal in the investor community, and they're called REIAs. These are like meetup groups locally. They're like think of it as an investor club. And investors get together and sometimes trade properties for the purposes of 1031s, ironically enough. But they also just network with other investors. It's a great opportunity to learn new strategies. And I think that this is a really powerful one. Doug, have you been to any of these meetings or connected with folks who are leveraging these in any way?
Everywhere I go. There are good ones and there are bad ones.
Right.
You'll know really quick when you go to one of these events if it's a good one, because they're not pumping what they're doing. They're pumping what the group is doing. They're letting you share your ideas. They're letting you share your property to the group. They're sharing their property they want to sell. And a lot of these are individual investors. But here's the important thing. You've heard the story, to get in the shed, just be, you don't have to be the sharpest tool in the shed, just be in the shed. That's the shed you want to be in. Hang around people like you. But Jeff, I want to say one thing to your group. If you want to attract investors, become one. If you like skiing, I'm sorry, if you want to have, because you'll be bitching at the Christmas party about the same things they're bitching about. You have something in common already. If you don't own an investment property, they're going to say, well, how many properties do you have? And you're going to have to say, oh, I don't have any. So when I'm a 1031 guy for 22 years, Doug, how many properties do you own? I say, how many do you think I own? So it's like, it becomes a sea of opportunity. So yes, become one if you want to attract them.
Grab your fingers and toes, right?
And if you don't own one, go look for one and talk about it. Trust me, you'll attract them.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And for anyone who hasn't owned property, it's a truly magnificent thing. It's like, why are we all at eXp Realty? Well, there's a lot of reasons. It's an amazing brokerage, but beyond that, the company has offered us the opportunity to have passive and residual types of income. This is another avenue for doing that with your money. And it's a very permanent way to do that can't be shifted around based on market movement quite as much. So I love this idea. And so those are called REIAs. Again, I'm going to post this list here in a second in the chat so everybody has access. We'll put it down below afterward. There are meetup groups for this. So if any of you guys have ever done like a meetup group for quilting or bike riding or whatever, that's all great, but they don't make you money. They don't make me money because I'm not doing the Tour de France, although very cool. And so guess what? There are meetup groups for investors. It's the same thing as kind of an REIA, maybe a little less formalized. Again, another great option for you. For me personally, something that I have done that is highly effective at finding investor clients is run social media ads that are very likely to draw investors toward you. And you might be going, well, hold on a minute. What type of an ad would that be? And you got to be careful, by the way, because you're not a financial advisor. So you can't be like, I'm going to save you a whale of amount of money on your taxes and then you go to jail. And so don't do that. However, what you can run are ads specific to, let's say, for instance, distressed properties or foreclosure properties. And you're not just giving the property address away. You can run an ad that literally says, we have a free list of foreclosure properties, register here. Some percentage of those folks, you've got two categories of people who will register on that one: people who can't afford to buy a house at all, and investors. Those are the two. So your job is just to weed them out, right, left, right, and figure out who's in that group. But I've found that to be super powerful. And by the way, don't discount the people who can't afford yet. Drop them into a bucket. Realize some of them are going to need credit repair or they're going to need a nurture cycle for 18 to 24 months. And then you can turn them into a client down the road. That's great. So they're either clients now or clients later. The clients now will make up for the clients later because they're investors. Here's one of my very favorites. And Doug, I used to use this one with our team. I found it super powerful. And I don't know if you've taught this before, but if you haven't, I'm going to add it to your arsenal. We called for rent by owner properties. Furbos, right? Some people call them furballs. Furbos, right? What is a for rent by owner? It's literally somebody, think about someone, they own the property themselves. They are an investor. They're between tenants and they place the investment property on Craigslist, let's say, for rent. This moment in time is an ideal moment for you to call them up and say, hey, Doug, I saw that you placed that property for rent. Is it still available? Yes, it is. Fantastic. I'm just curious if you'd consider selling that instead of renting it right now for the right price. All I'm looking for is a yes or a no. And this is the interesting bit, because I've already got an investor on the phone. It doesn't matter what they say. I'm looking to turn them into a client. If they say yes, I'll say, great, let's come take a look at the property. Let's make sure that you're structuring it properly. Let me connect you with Doug. If they say no, I'll say, terrific. Some other people said yes. Are you interested in picking up another asset? It doesn't matter what they say. I can turn them into a client. This is one of my very favorites. It's if they answer the phone, you've got a very high probability of picking up a client right there. And by the way, most agents aren't calling those. It's crazy to me. I don't know why.
But I've learned something today too.
It's a great one. And by the way, they tend to be hiding on Craigslist. You will bump into a lot of property managers masquerading as the owner, by the way. So if you get them, just be like, oh, I'm sorry. I must have the wrong number, and just hang up. Doesn't matter. They're trying to do their job too, and good for them. Speaking of property managers, however, interestingly, property managers, if you get in good with one, take one to lunch, They can connect you with investors who are looking to rotate and upgrade their inventory. And don't get yourself wrong, a property manager, especially if they have a vested interest in the company for which they manage, right? Like, in other words, they're the owner or an owner. Is it better for them to manage 2 properties than 1? Yes. So have a conversation with them and be like, listen, I was thinking, let's go through your clients and let's see if we can make your clients make more clients. We'll pour water on their heads like little gremlins and make them all have little fur babies, right? This is perfect timing for this conversation right now. And the property manager is probably not very well equipped to have this conversation. They may not know Doug. They may not know you. And so come as a packaged duo, go in and have this conversation with people. And guess what? They're going, holy crap, I didn't even realize, right? They usually make roughly what, 5, 10%, 20% if they're egregious, on the monthlies coming off these properties. But for them, that's 20%, 10%, whatever it is, on more than one. It's a good deal, right? So these are great. I'm going to just rip down a quick list of a couple more here because we promised you guys you're going to get some. Where do I go looking for these? So another one, non-owner occupied properties bought with cash. You can get a list of all of those from your local title company. They're not going to give you phone numbers. Okay. So you may need an additional resource like a Mojo Sells or like a Vulcan 7 or a Land Voice or something like that. If you take that list, however, and you send it to your Vulcan 7 list, they will send you back all the cell phone information for all of those owners. You pop it into a dialer, you spend one afternoon going through 2,000 numbers, and you're going to have some deals come out of it. I promise you. It's absolutely insane. Nobody's calling these folks. You can also take that same list. Once you have the cell phone number, you can populate it into the back of Facebook. And now you have a targeted audience that you can direct advertise to on their Facebook, Instagram, 500,000 mobile apps. And all of them can see ads that are like, are you an investor? I'd like to help you make even more money. And it will go to them. You can create a lookalike audience off of that one audience that will now go to other investors. And you can build it out to have 2 million people on it instead of only 2,000. All right. Just so you guys know, these are all strategies. Investor workshops. They're usually in big towns, Portland, Seattle, et cetera. But who cares? Go pick up an investor client up in Seattle, but you're working on the south end of the state. You're licensed in the whole state, not in your city. It doesn't matter. And if somebody's looking to sell 6 properties, is it worth your time to drive a couple of times? Gosh, I hope so. I don't know what you're doing otherwise, right? So that's a great strategy. Your sphere of influence, reach out to folks and ask them this question. Hey, who do you know who owns some investment properties right now? I'm going through and I'm realizing people are only getting 6, 7% returns on their properties. They could be getting 17% if they did the right things right now. And we're helping them to do that, connecting them with the right resources. That is a powerful little script. And just look at people's portfolio. They don't realize that their cash on cash return in that property, including equity, gets worse literally every year that they own it. So we can go in and say, hey, your property went up by $400,000. Couldn't we put that $400,000 to better use because you haven't turned up rents in 10 years? That's a really fun conversation to have. And last on my list, at least, is Toastmasters. A lot of time, for some whatever reason, I don't know what reason this is, a lot of investors end up in the Toastmasters Club. And so if you've never done that, it's a really fun environment. Anyway, it tends to be really kind of welcoming and positive and inspiring. But in addition, you're going to get connected to other people of means many times. As Doug said at the very beginning today, he said, hold on, I wrote down your quote, my man. You said, hold on, there is no other investment that builds wealth faster than real estate. Doug Blackwell today. And I agree with that. And what's interesting is if you surround yourself with other wealthy people, they tend to be in this game already. True or true?
And they're hanging out with like-minded people. So, hey, Jeff, I want to talk a little bit also about their personal sphere of influence. A lot of people are afraid to approach their personal sphere. Asking your friend for, can I sell your house or, something like that. The conversations you have with them, it's just like social media. If you put good information out, it attracts the person. So one conversation I think is really interesting is a lot of people know that the young generation, I'm saying the millennials and the next generation back, they can't afford to buy a home. And it's not going to get any better. And if they wait, it's just going to get worse. Mom and dad know that. Mom and dad, though, don't know how to help them. See, one thing I know, that generation, I bought my first property when I was really young. I didn't have any money. I needed someone else to help pay for it. I didn't know what I was doing. I bought a 4-plex with a VA loan. I don't know if people know you can do a 4-plex with a VA loan. You have to live in one of the units. But guess what? The other 3 pay the mortgage. I didn't know I did that. I simply did it because it made sense. Okay. That was my first property. My children, ages 20 and 22, I'm not giving them anything. They got to earn everything they do. My son needed a down payment. What did he do? He went and got his real estate license with EXP. Why EXP? Because EXP doesn't charge him anything but $250 to buy a property for himself. They don't take their cut. He gets a huge down payment for that purchase for himself. He teamed his sister up with him, who had some cash. They bought it together. And guess what they did? They rented out 2 of the rooms to their friends who needed a place to rent in Scottsdale, Arizona. They paid the mortgage payment. My kids now are working on the 3rd property 2 years later. You see, it's just getting started is the important thing. The money will show up, seller financing. And here's one thing your parents don't know. The parents don't know they can do with a 1031 exchange. They can sell one house and buy 3 tenants in common with their children. They can buy 3 and let the kids live there and rent from them for a couple of years. They can do a lot of things to help those children get their first home. And one thing, I know it's a little higher tech, you'll get it, Jeff. A lot of parents don't want to gift money to their children. They just don't want to give it to them. It's not, they want to make them earn it. They can also be partners with them in the property, tenants in common. That's a really big trend happening right now where they give them $50,000 or $100,000, but they're on title with them and they're not lending the money to them. They're on title. So when they refinance it, they got to get them off of it. But it's not a loan. I'm going to go in with you, tenants in common on that deal. And a lot of clients are doing that because the gifting is not, they're older. They need the money for themselves eventually. So there's other strategies to help get some more sales out of these things.
It's so smart. And the beauty is, if you guys are listening, hopefully with the right ears on right now, what you would recognize is if you didn't know these things, would you right now want to talk to Doug more about this because you have a house to sell and you're nervous? Am I really going to lose money or make money or whatever's going to happen next? I don't want to have to pay my $250,000 to the IRS, right? Which, like, more power to the country, but like if there's a rule in the IRS code that tells me that I don't have to do that if I just structure it correctly, why would I choose to write a big fat check and send it off into Never Never Land, right? So for me, this is an optimized conversation to be able to have with a client. And even if you have a fairly low level of understanding after today's call, hopefully we've given you some bingo terms and some good questions. And at least you won't do what Doug did and go, what's a 1031? Right? Like that will move someone away from you like you have the plague.
Exactly. Hey, I do want to share one last thing because we're going to run out of time if we're not. We've got plenty of time, actually 20 minutes, but something else is going on that when your client sells an investment property and they say they're going to pay the taxes, that means the money is going to go in their bank account. They're not going to buy something today. They may not ever buy anything again, but they want to. If you want to get a high probability of getting that money actually turned into a purchase for yourself, because you're selling their investment property for them, right? You got it listed, you're selling it for them. I always encourage them for the $1,000, open up the exchange, put it in the account, and give yourself 45 days to think about it. Something might show up that you want. Because once you pay the taxes, you can't get it back. Most of them say, something that makes sense. When they do that, they really do want to buy one. Because someone will say, nope, I just want the money. That's cool. But a lot of them say, that makes sense. Guess what? You just got a 45-day fuse to go shopping for a piece of real estate for them. That's really cool. But also there's other hidden little things in there. But that buying that 45 days, I've seen probably 30% of the transactions actually turn into transactions that were buys. So again, it's my little plug on that. So
I love it. Well, and the other great benefit here, and just to really hammer this home, because I see so many great, we've got everyone from, multi-million dollar producers on this call to agents where maybe it's your first year in real estate, and that's great. I know that there's a lot of us who worked with investors our first year in real estate. There's nothing holding you back. Just so you know, it's about building these relationships and then building your competence. I really believe that this is an area where more agents would give themselves an extra advantage if they would educate themselves a bit more. And there's 2 reasons. Number one, your long-term strategy in real estate shouldn't just be to sell a house, spend the money, sell a house, spend the money, sell a house, spend the money, sell a house, spend the money. Right? Because then, and the old joke is your retirement party and your funeral will be the same party, right? Like, so guess what? You're just going to keep going forever and just be exhausted all the way to the finish line and then face plant into death. That's probably not a great strategy for long-term success and happiness. So eventually what you want to do is build enough money every year that you can live on some and then invest all the rest into, guess what? I don't know, real estate. You already know it. And guess what? Most wealthy people, that's where they built their wealth. And by most, we mean a very disproportionate, ridiculous most. It's like devastating most. And so here's the other part though. If you can work with one client and do 4 transactions, how many clients do you need to do 40? 10. Same amount of networking, but fewer successes required. And so if you are going to these correct environments, that's terrific. And then as Doug said before, and maybe this is a third point, once you're in that environment, what? Your network predicts your net worth. And we know this is true. Your network predicts your net worth. And so if you are surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals who already invest in real estate, who've already built a massive wealth position, who understand this, and now that starts to become your network. These are the conversations you're having. This is the focus in your world. Guess what you're very likely to do? I don't know, purchase some real estate and start realizing those gains for yourself. As John Sellers, one of our other great leaders, always says when he's on this call, he says, I'm always amazed when agents say, this is a really great investment opportunity for a great investor. And he's like, then why aren't you buying it? Like, it's right there. We can show you how to structure the deal. But what you can't do is pass it off to somebody else and then wonder why you've never made it.
Can I make another statement to that too, Jeff?
Please.
If you're on this call and you don't own real estate today, there's a very high probability you will never get to own real estate. It's going to get real expensive. So please get started, brothers. This is no joke. It's go time.
Yeah. Real estate's going up, 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 right? And there's a lot of reasons why this is not a macro microeconomics call for sure. However, that's going to happen, which will be great for you if you own property. Great for you. Not as great if you don't. And so you want to get in the game. It's just, what is that? Esports, get in the game. So we want you guys to be in the game. This is a really, really powerful call. So what I'd like to do is, we've got a lot of agents on here live. Do we have some questions from folks who are here who are like, you know what I've always wondered, or I don't know how to navigate this, or how do I find that? Because this is your moment to talk to somebody who does this. This is day in, day out. This is Doug's this is totally his lane. It's an area of expertise. So this is our opportunity to learn together. Feel free to either unmute yourself or raise your hand. Either one is good on this end. Who do we got? Somebody get us started. It's moments like this when I always wish I had the.
No, well, I love all.
There we go.
Doug. Yeah, Doug always has a lot of experience and knowledge to offer all of us. I've had Doug in on an investor class before, and he always had people in the room that were looking at how, they want to get started in investing. They didn't know how to do it, so they showed up to the class. The one thing Doug always does is ask questions in order to help them understand what direction of investing they're going to take and what's likely going to happen for them. So Doug, what do you normally get from people they've never even dabbled in it? They don't know where to start. Do you have any suggestions or ideas of what you're normally seeing right now?
Are you talking about an agent that wants to get started investing?
Help us help them.
Got it.
Because we're looking at the opportunity of, like you said, conversations of people who say like kind and those kinds of things. That means people who know what they're doing. 1031 exchange, where they're invested. But what if they want to get started and they don't know how? How do we help them figure out how to get started?
Gotcha. So it's really going to be your best target is one that is obviously has a decent income. They've gotten themselves to the point where they're making money, but they're going to start having the same tax problems that everybody does that's making money. What asset can you buy that will provide you with a tax break? That would be investment real estate. They're going to buy something. They got tons of money in their 401k, not the 401k, but in stocks, bonds, whatever. They maybe want to convert some of that over to making that purchase of a piece of real property. That is one that, again, people are sick of the stock market too, but they won't admit it. That's the only thing they know. And educating them on the benefits of owning investment real estate, the tax deductions, the work. It's work. Yeah, everything's work, but nothing is worth having it is free. You got to put a little effort into everything you do. But the conversations I have with the first timers, it's hard because they're afraid. They're fearful. But once you have them, I always tell them, once you do your first one, it's like riding a bike, literally. You'll do it again and you'll do it again. You'll probably never want to sell anything. And I tell my story. You see, stories sell, okay? Now that my children have bought their first home and they're only 3 years later buying their third home, they didn't have any money 3 years ago. Guess why they have money today? Because they're making money with real estate. And I tell them that same story. And they'll say, how do I get started? I'll say, well, do you have a brother or sister? Are we in the military? You got a VA loan? Maybe your parents can help. Parents want to help. And that's a great way to start. Parents don't like being on a loan, but parents may not know. Talk to your loan officer. 1 year of payments, 12 consecutive months, where zero money comes out of their bank account and it all comes from the children's bank accounts. That loan doesn't count against the parents' debt to income ratio. Many people don't know that. So it's a 12-month investment in the children, letting them get a loan, having them on title. And I tell my parents, don't give them the money, give them the $100,000, but be tenants in common with them. That way, if they screw it up, you have a chance of fixing it. So it's a fearful thing. Okay, it's all fear, and unfortunately, it's a crippling thing. But once they get past it, it's a piece of cake. Now, some of them will say, I've heard about being a landlord. It's really hard. Great, hire a property manager. That's what they're for. So that's kind of how it gets going. But most importantly, it takes time. Planting the seeds is what happens. And you got to always be talking about it and telling stories. And it will pique their curiosity. They'll start losing sleep at night and they'll call you. And rarely do they say, let's go do it right away. But if you want to get them started, you got to start talking about it. In fact, you may want to have an investor workshop or a seminar of some sort where you attract people to come have dinner with you. The parents bring your children. Let's learn together. So that's a big one. I saw some people doing that on one of the meetups. Parents that have children that want to buy their first home, let's help them together. And they come together. And they come together, you got a client. If they come together, you have a client. So
I love that. Well, and it kind of reinforces this, like kind of what you just said, fear plus ignorance is not really a great reason not to move forward. Educate yourself, get over the fear. Look at the herd. And if most of the herd's going right, but the successful part of the herd's going left, make an intelligent decision right there. I love this positioning of, there are a lot. We hear the numbers of like so many more people, even into their 30s, still living with their parents now. That's not because the parents are like really wanting that. And so I'm sure that this is a great conversation to be able to broker in. And as you start to think differently, I think that the name of this call could have been how to think resourcefully in real estate to create more options for more people. Because a lot of times we think, oh, well, this person couldn't buy another house. They've got a really nice house. Yeah, but they've got $3 million sitting in an IRA doing nothing for them. And actually, good question, Doug. If somebody wants to take some funds out of their IRA and utilize it in like a self-directed, do you have somebody that you work with who can help them set that up?
Absolutely. Again, I like having someone local you can walk in and visit with. Each region has somebody. There's a bunch in Arizona, for example. I have mine with directed IRA. And also there's one called solo 401k. If you're on this call and you're a 1099 person, you are all self-employed. Look into a solo 401k. But having a 401k rolling out from an old company, you realize there's millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, billions of dollars in 401ks sitting there wanting to do something else. A 401k, self-directed, can purchase real estate. And it's not a bad thing to do. It could loan, it could do a lot of neat things. So self-directed IRAs are cool. But also for the first-time home buyers, that they can take money out of a 401k for a down payment of their first purchase. So that's another thing to make sure they can do. See, the ignorance is insane. I meet thousands of people, not thousands, hundreds every year probably, that never heard of a 1031 exchange. I've been doing this for 22 years, doing 5 classes a week sometimes, and it still doesn't get out. Just mentioning what's that. You'll hear that so often, and I want you guys to be the hero on that. I want you to be my cheerleader, because they need to know.
I love it. Well, and it's just such a great way to network, because a lot of times we say you need to have more conversations. And then the question is, well, but what is the content of those conversations? Let's say that you're maxing that out and you're talking to 10 people a day about real estate. That's great. But if you are leaving 15 doors locked shut, that could be open for these folks simply because you haven't showed up, which by the way, you guys are here today. So we're not grumping at you, but continue to educate yourself, continue down this path. Don't let today be the okay, well, like 1031, I guess I kind of understand it now. Check. No, unless you can, by the way, unless you can teach it, you probably don't understand it. That's why I'm sitting here taking notes today. Is because I have this firm belief that when you can really teach things, then you can empower others. And that transfer of knowledge and energy that you have around something, once you truly understand it to the level where you can help someone else with it, that's when it starts to become worth something. And that's why you get paid money. Right? Ultimately, we think sometimes, well, if the clients just met me, then they'd want to work with me. No, you got to bring value. And part of the value today is starting to understand these resourceful avenues. There are people who could benefit from you who right now don't even understand that they should be participating in the buy-sell part of the real estate market, but they're avoiding it because they think it's a bad time. And there are ways to show them why it's a super empowering time to participate, but they need to understand certain things first and be connected to the right resource. That's why Doug's here today. So it's really, really powerful. Any other questions? I think I saw maybe something come up in the chat. Juan says, are there any legal restrictions to advertise 1031 exchange as a way to attract interested investors?
Okay, let's have some fun with that one. I'm a qualified intermediary, okay? Defining qualified in my business means that I'm not something else to the client. I'm not their agent in any way. It's not that I have a degree. It's not that I have some special bonding, some special insurance. It's nice that I carry it. There are no rules or regulations for advertising for 1031 exchanges. However, please do not advertise things you don't know. The general thing about understanding it, great, because one thing you do not want to do is put bad information out. So the 1031 exchange is using it as part of your advertising tool. Absolutely, I encourage it because you put it on there. I don't know how many times I have investor clients call me and say, I wish I wasn't working with this gal or guy, because they don't even own their own home. That's what they tell me. I was like, well, just understanding what we go through as investors, when you're out looking for a home for them, they know that comfort level is there. So advertising in your stuff, put in your business card, 1031 exchange, you have to put specialist, just say, just by putting 1031 exchange on on your advertisement, understanding it, you'll attract somebody. It's there. You have a resource, call me. I work nationally, so it doesn't matter. And there's only one state I really don't like working in, but I won't tell you which one that is. It's New York. It's really tough. I don't mind it. It's just New York is a tough city because they got co-ops up there. They got things going on, but we get through it. But yeah, advertising is not a problem. This presentation I'm going to send to you, however, do not put it on your social media. Why? Because there's information on it that's really good today, but 6 months from now, it might be old. And when you post something like this, old data is bad to have on your social media. Once it gets out there, it stays out there. So general statements about 1031, yeah. Posting it is fine, but just be careful of what you put on that. If you want me to look it over for you before you post it, I'd be glad to do that. So
that's awesome. We've got Tyler's hand up. Tyler Boning.
So just curious, pretend you're just a guy walking by like my wife and I at a table in a restaurant, because we're about a year away from making a decision, and my wife is on point of we should either rent our current house or sell it, and I am on point of we should make it a short-term rental. So pretend like you hear those statements and we're open to the random guy speaking to us. What would you say?
Random guy. Okay, so and you're going to tap him on the shoulder and say, by the way, is that what you're going to do?
Yeah. You're just like, oh, hey, I heard you talking about this. Like, what would you...
Or do I hear you saying that? Well, let me share with you what I would say. If you hit me with that, why don't you give Doug a call and talk to him about what that means to convert your house to an investment? I'm going to ask him this question. So at the end of the day, no rules, no tax laws, nothing. No, you could take the money and walk away with it. What would you want to see the money do? You see, what would you want to do? If you took the money, what would you want to do with it? And they'll answer my question, whatever it might be. They'll say, making it a short-term rental, however, no matter what they say, I'm going to say, but making it a short-term rental, however, has some serious benefits to that. One is you're probably planning on leaving the furniture behind so they can live in it, right? They'll say, of course. They'll say, it's probably old stuff, isn't it? And they'll say, yep. Well, by renting it out as a short-term rental, you can now write it all off. What do you mean write it off? Yeah, it's personal property. How much did you pay for all that stuff? Well, depreciated a little bit. You may have spent $20,000 or $30,000 for that furniture. Well, now you're going to make it, you're employing it, you're deploying it for investment purposes. You'll probably get a $10,000 write-off for that. And it's going to get destroyed anyway. So who cares? So at the end of the day, it's a short-term rental. You're renting it out, you're making income enough to pay the mortgage, hopefully more, if there is a mortgage. What the cool thing is, though, it's going to go up in value. And guess what? It's still going to be tax-free for up to 3 years. What? Right. Because as long as you sell this property before the 3rd year, okay, and walk away from it, it still qualifies as your primary residence that you can get the exclusion for. You've lived in it 2 of the past 5. So let's say, for example, you're at $400,000 in capital gains today. Okay, you get $400,000 tax-free and you can walk away with it. Renting it out for 2 years is what I recommend. Let's say it jumps to $500,000 in value. You still get all that money tax-free. You don't even have to do a 1031 exchange. But here's the cool thing. What if it jumps to $850,000? Or maybe it's already over $500,000. Now you can take the $500,000 and do a 1031 exchange on the rest and not pay any tax and defer everything. I totally encourage people to do that. In fact, if you need to buy a new home to live in, which I totally encourage you to do right away. Why? Because now you have 2 homes going up in value that'll be eventually tax-free. Take a loan against that house to buy that property if you even have to. It's okay because you're just buying more real estate. And making the one you had an investment property for a couple of years is brilliant. Short-term or long-term, but do not rent it out after the 2nd year. Why? Because you lease it out on a 1-year lease at year 2. That 3rd year lease has to end before you can sell it, doesn't it? That'll put you past the 3rd year. You need to sell it, close it before the 3rd year. Now, if you're on this call, do not get mad at me if you're an accountant or an attorney. I'm not giving you tax or legal advice. But what I want to share with you is a little trick, okay? And you want to talk to your accountant about it to make sure he's cool with it. But what if you get stuck out there at year 3 and you got the guy in your property and you need to trigger that transfer of title that causes that primary residence exclusion to get locked in, okay? Well, trigger the sale, sell it to one of your kids. Give them $1 and you carry if it's a paid off loan, if the property's paid off, you carry the financing for everything else as a loan. Let your kids sell the property and pay the loan off later. It triggers that tax-free transaction, okay? The transfer of title does that for you. It's not illegal. It's just simply saying your intent was to sell it and you got it sold before that 3rd year expired, okay? Again, the reason I bring that one up is when you do your search at title, if you can find some way of figuring out a list of people that used to live in their homes as their primaries, but are now renting them out, they probably moved someplace else, but are renting those houses out, you'll find if they're at year 2, they need to be told what's going on. Are you planning on selling this by year 3? Most of them will say, what's the big deal of selling it at year 3? So if you don't sell it before the 3rd year, it's not tax-free. And they're going to say this, it's not tax-free anyway, I made it an investment. You're going to say, oh no, it's still tax-free up to 3 years. They're going to say, what? So they're going to want to unload. So a lot of them will. So I'm glad you brought that question up the way you did because it covered short-term and long-term because it doesn't matter with 1031 as long as it's investment. And it could also use. I don't even get into that. There's so many things we could do, guys. I mean, Jeff and I could talk for days about this, but getting the conversation going, Tyler, is the important thing. And if you're doing the right thing with your spouse, saying, look, you want to do this, I want to do that, you can make a legitimate decision based on whatever you want. But you want to write the furniture off, make it short-term first for at least a year. Because if you take the furniture out, you can't write it off.
That's such a great point too. It's another one of those examples of information that you don't get unless you're on a call like this one. We've got Kimmy's hand up, and then we'll probably do our wrap up after that. Kimmy Fernandez.
Hey, so I have a question. I own a property where we have 2 other residences on our property that we rent out. What happens if you sell it?
Kimmy. I love you. I want to talk about mixed use properties. Oh my God, you showed up. See? Okay, it's a perfect example. You want something, you put it out there, it shows up. So what you have, Kimmy, is called a mixed use property. A mixed use property is both investment and personal use. Okay. You're living in one of the houses, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're renting out 2 of the other ones.
Yeah.
Is it all the same tax lot?
Yes.
Perfect. So we do is we say, okay, when you go to sell that property, is it going to be more than $500,000 in capital gains when you sell it?
It very well could be. I mean, we're not looking at selling it right away because we love where we live. But I mean, within a short period of time, we might want to use our home as a short-term rental because it's on the river and
Uh-huh.
just have it give us money while we travel for a while. Or someday we might want to sell it. I don't know.
Right. Well,
I just want to know what
you see,
happens.
so everybody on this call, listen carefully. I'm moving around a little bit because I had a baby crying in the background. Hold on a second. So what you're dealing with, Kenny, is the right thing. You're thinking about something in the future. Waiting until that time comes to have this conversation is a disaster. But
Mhm.
knowing it's coming, your brain is going to start ticking. You're in the mode of buying or selling something. All the agents on this call, that's when you get engaged with somebody, not when they're doing it, when they're thinking about doing it. You will become part of their brain implant, okay?
Mhm.
So in your transaction, what's going to happen when you go to sell that property? We're going to do evaluation of the whole property. If
Mhm.
you get $500,000 of gain or more, we're going to do a mixed use transaction. We're going to carve your house off of it that you're living in and
Mhm.
take up to $500,000 of capital gains and give it to you. Okay.
Okay.
The other property, the rest of it's going to be carved off, and we're going to do a 1031 exchange with that. So you'll get your exclusion and you get to take a 1031 with the rest of it.
So
The
we'll
neat thing
just
is
get
you can
to
occupy it.
buy another house plus some more rentals.
Correct. Or you could buy another mixed use.
Uh-huh.
See, a lot of people, what they do is they buy. It gets really wacky when you do these fun things. I also want to share with you the most interesting one I did. In the Pacific Northwest, they're the first to start buying hotels to house the homeless. Well, they were taking them under eminent domain, okay? And one of my friends had his hotel, a Motel 6, 28 units, taken from him by the city of Portland
Oh
because
boy.
they needed to house the homeless. Well, he lived there. They made him homeless doing it. He lived there with his family. That was his business. They took his job. It was crazy. So anyway, what we did for him is we carved off the 2 units he was living in and the storage unit in the back as his home. It gave him $720,000 tax-free to go buy a home. We
Oh
did a
wow.
1031 exchange with the rest where we bought an apartment complex with that money to generate income with. You
Okay.
see, you're going to do the same thing. If you have less than that, the only thing is too, you're also writing off part of that property too, right?
Yeah.
As investment. And that if it's big enough, we can defer that because there could be capital gains tax from depreciation or capture. But again,
Mhm.
guys, if you have a mixed use property, I absolutely freaking love those things. They are so powerful. You do not need to have walls. You don't have to have boundaries or separate buildings to make them mixed use. My children are renting out 2 bedrooms inside their 4-bedroom house. Those 2 rooms are being depreciated. When they moved out, they made the whole thing an investment. When they sell it, they're going to take 50% of that property tax free because they already made more than 500,000 in the thing. Isn't that crazy? It's nuts. So anyway, yes, great stuff. That's mixed use.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
By the way, mixed use also counts for a duplex. If you want to buy a home, guys, and you can't afford it right now, go buy a duplex or a triplex. Let someone else pay for it. It's a owner occupied loan as long as you live there. Okay. And just enjoy the fact that someone else is paying your mortgage. It's okay to do that. And when you sell it, you get the 1 unit tax free and you do a 1031 exchange on the other 2. Okay.
So, Doug, 2 things. 1, thank you so much for being here. 2, Liz Bobert wants to know if you want to adopt her, apparently, in the chat. So reach out to her if you're interested in adopting another daughter. She'd like to get picked up. This is
Let
awesome,
me introduce
man.
you to my daughter. Let me introduce you to my daughter. That's what you want. Just trust, get in the shed with her. You'll run.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, this has been huge value, absolutely huge value. And you know, the scary part sometimes, I think as an agent, you show up to a call like this one and you feel like it's going to be crunchy, dry toast, right? Like I think sometimes for agents, anytime we need a calculator, it's like agents are like, I think I'd rather rub sandpaper on my eyeballs. And the nice thing was today, I think we gave you a clear path forward to be able to turn some of this knowledge into additional transactions. Ultimately, that's how you get paid, and then go the distance. Take some of the money that you're making off of real estate. Call Doug and be like, what do? I need to get going. I want to get in the game, right? Like get in the game. And so this is what we're going to keep encouraging everybody to do, is to go full cycle with your business, not make money, spend money, make money, spend money. That's what poor people do. And so we're going to build wealth through real estate. Doug, any final parting shots?
Yes, I have one shot to put across the bow. I will invite any of you on this call today, because you're part of Jeff's team, you have the kindness to bring me on board, is that if you want to do an event, eventually you get a group of investors want to get together and learn all about real estate investing and how to make it happen, or they're investors that want to know what to do. If you want to put an event together, I'll come to it. But I got to be told well in advance so I can fly to it, and I need at least 20 families there or 20 people there. Again, it's something, if you want to have some really cool times, let's do it. And I want to see some business happen, and I want to make sure it rock and rolls. And I may, if it's the right group of people, I may even buy the dinners for them. So
Holy
we'll
moly.
talk about that.
Oh man, Doug, that's a monster offer, guys. So one of the top experts in the country. And thanks again, by the way, Christine Kites, for lining this up. I know this is a great relationship that she had, and for always bringing such great value here to the community. Doug, can't thank you enough. Amazing. And we're going to make sure everybody gets a copy of this for the replay as well. I know some people were here live. We have some of our agents who watch this again in the replay mode, and we've got great comments coming in. Lexi says, "Thanks, Doug." Michelle, "Thanks so much, Doug." Liz, thanks so much. We've just got a lot of love coming at you. Clearly, you brought a lot of value and big mic drop moments today. Hopefully, you guys realize there's an opportunity as an agent to build your business by working with investors. And we're trying to show you the path to go forward, because this is going to be a big part of the marketplace right now, and it's getting bigger over time. The more you learn this, the more you own the shop, right? Own the shoe shop and all the shoes, baby, right? Don't leave anything to chance. And so I really love this. This is great information. Thank you guys for being the best part of the community. We love y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.